Oh, the first one says Vice President Harris was never appointed border czar. There's never been such a position. It doesn't exist. Why are Democrats so sensitive about the vice president and the border?
Why are Republicans so sensitive about actually not owning up to them getting in the way of a border deal? Why? Why won't they own up to that? Why won't they own up to the last president told them not to move forward? It was a bipartisan deal on just right there, available to them, and they voted twice against it.
That was Biden Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre nicely shutting down the Fox News reporter Pete Doocy, asking about, which is sort of a conversation I'm already bored with and I find sort of dumb, was Kamala Harris the border czar or not? She wasn't. Just in a technical sense, that's not the term that the administration ever used. She was tasked with diplomacy with Central American countries. That's it. But the media did start labeling her because of that. Border czar. Even non-right-wing outlets would call her that. So I understand the confusion. You're not crazy if you've ever thought she was the border czar, but that's just not a term the administration or she has ever used to describe her work in diplomacy, like I said, with Central American countries relating to migration to the United States from those countries. But what we will continue to say, and I went into more depth, so I'll try not to do it again here, about the border, the broader immigration issue in a recent segment, but what we have to continue to say is while I actually do want to engage in more conversations about what could Biden have done better relating to border and immigration, what could Congress have done better, Republicans have proven themselves to be bad faith actors in that discussion. So then why engage in what could be a productive discussion where we learn from our mistakes when the person engaging in that conversation with you has no interest in actually having a productive conversation leading to complex solutions? Because when we had a pretty complex and once in a generation solution brought forward twice in Congress, Republicans slapped it down for political reasons. It's exactly the type of legislation that Trump would have supported in the past. Republicans would have supported in the past, but because Biden's president, they didn't want him to get a win. So if you're not interested in solutions to a problem, then we're not going to take seriously your fear-mongering about that problem, right? And I'm happy Karine Jean-Pierre brought this up here. I've been someone screaming about this for so long. Border security bill, bipartisan border security bill has to be brought up in every conversation about the border. And we have to fact check the statements they'll make about Biden has open border policies. No, he doesn't. And correct the record on his record in him constantly trying to get more resources to the border, wanting security at the border, but also wanting a humane border, which sometimes Republicans seem to run away from. And we have to reject the vile dehumanization and fear-mongering that we hear from Republicans. Yes, it is true. There are issues relating to our southern border. That doesn't justify a lot of the rhetoric we hear from the likes of Trump. But here's more from this back and forth.
Do you think that the border would be less of a talking point now if there was less migration to the border, say if somebody had addressed root causes of migration sooner?
Wait, hold on a second. Did you not hear the beginning of I know there were a lot of toppers, but one of the toppers, I talked about what we're seeing at the border. It's down by 55%, not because of Republicans in Congress and what they did. It's because what this president and this vice president did. He moved forward and took actions to deal with what's going on at the border. Republicans continue to block getting resources to the Border Patrol agents. They continue to block actually dealing with an immigration system. So yes, we are going to debunk the false characterization of the vice president. She was not a border czar, and it's not just us. Independent fact checkers have said the same thing, that did not exist, and that is not true.
So then to Pete Doocy's earlier question, why is this something that Democrats are pushing back against? Is it sensitivity? Why are you so afraid, is sort of the question he's asking, that Kamala Harris would be associated with the handling of the border? And I think we just need to say it's not about sensitivity or freaking out over it. You're just incorrectly assessing what her position was, so we're correcting you, and then we can get back to a conversation about it. I mentioned another segment. I do think there are critiques, especially in the message and the urgency and just the appearance of taking the issue seriously of Democrats, sure, but also it's hard to walk down that road of critiques when Republicans are just such a dishonest, unserious, governing disaster with no interest in participating in solutions. So if they're going to take that and run with it as proof that they've been right, then it's hard to even go there until they get serious and become more good faith. But really interesting thing I want to discuss with you relating to this. First, actually, I should provide some evidence to the point that was made there by Karine Jean-Pierre about border crossings, not because Republicans, because they've been out of the room in talking about solutions for some time now. So I guess you would credit the Biden administration. U.S. Customs and Border Protection breaks this down. Border Patrol encounters between ports of entry were 29% lower than in May 2024, and were the lowest monthly total for the Border Patrol along the southwest border since January 2021, as well as lower than the number of encounters between ports of entry in June of 2019, the last comparable year prior to the pandemic. So 2020, the pandemic changed in a major way migration patterns. It's hilarious to me that Republicans point to 2020 as their big victory year on the border when it was obviously the pandemic contributing to those numbers. So you go back to 2019, Trump's still president for some time by then, so it should be better than it could ever be under Biden, right? Well, June of 2019, so same time of year as we're in now. Right now, we're seeing lower border encounter numbers. And if you're going to blame Biden for everything, then I guess you would credit him with this, even though I think my audience, we have a nuanced enough perspective to understand maybe some policy implementations that we've seen in recent months could contribute to this, but probably it's mostly things happening outside of Biden's control relating to the countries where people are migrating from. But there's something else I want to get into in this segment that is super interesting and makes me so mad at the rhetoric we hear from Trump and his allies. One of the things that is discussed a lot as to why it's appropriate to speak in such vitriolic ways about lots of groups of people and Biden and Kamala Harris is fentanyl overdose deaths, which are super tragic and tens of thousands of people are dying per year. So it's a very real issue. But as is the case with so many of these subjects, it's almost more horrifying that Republicans are willing to be dishonest about it because of how serious of an issue it is. They're taking something, heartbreaking scenarios, pain in people's lives, and then being dishonest about the facts of that subject so they can exploit it for political reasons. And that is really, really unfortunate. I'll fact check what Trump says here to make that point.
We're losing 300,000 people a year to fentanyl that comes through our border. We had it down to the lowest number, and now it's worse than it's ever been. We had the best border, the most secure border we've ever had. And now, in just a short period of time, we have the worst numbers in history. They're coming.
So he said that, first of all, that's not a correct stat, but also there's a really stunning truth behind this issue. He wants you to believe that fentanyl overdoses were completely under control, lowest they'd ever been under him. That's what he said. And then are the highest they've ever been under Biden. Presumably, for that to happen, you would have needed to see a massive increase in overdose deaths between Trump and Biden. Well, actually, the massive skyrocketing in overdose deaths from fentanyl happened while Trump was president. And we have a hopeful sign for that stopping, that massive increase every year trend we've seen in recent years, stopping under Biden. So what am I talking about? Well, here you have a visual from Statista. Between the years that Trump was in power, 2017 to 2021, you saw a historic, disturbing increase in the number of overdose deaths. The year he came into office, 28,466 fentanyl overdose deaths. The year he left office, 70,601 fentanyl overdose deaths. To give you this in different terms, between January of 2020 and January of 2021, so the last year he was in office, overdose deaths involving synthetic opioids rose 55.6% and appeared to be the primary driver of the increase in total drug overdose deaths. That's according to DEA. So skyrocketing. And I'm not even jumping to a political point. Trump did that. But we have to contextualize. He's lying. He's lying, pretending like he got deaths down when they were going up faster than we'd ever seen. Because of very complex factors that aren't super Trump related. But nevertheless, that's what was happening. And he refuses to engage with that fact. And then, 2021 to 2022, we kept seeing increasing. But something exciting is happening. In 2023, according to the CDC, U.S. overdose deaths have decreased in 2023 for the first time since 2018. And specifically, fentanyl has decreased from 2022 to 2023. So under Trump, while he was president, we saw increase after increase. Biden's now president, and for the first time since the beginning of Trump's presidency, we saw a decrease in fentanyl overdose death. We should be figuring out what could be contributing to that and trying to further that trend, trying to make that a trend. But instead, Trump's flipping it around and saying that he had everything under control and it got out of control under Biden. It's really sick if you think about it, given how serious of an issue this is, because as I just explained, I'm not trying to make this a Trump caused the increase and Biden's caused a decrease. Now, there have been initiatives under the Biden administration to try to get this under control that probably is contributing, but I think we could just have a not super political discussion about the devastation that this is causing and what we should be doing across party lines to solve the issue. But instead, we can't have, just like with the border more generally, those serious discussions, those nonpartisan discussions, because of the exploitation of serious issues by Republicans like Trump for political reasons, twisting and in this case just flipping around the facts to serve his political ends and convincing people to vote for him because of the pain they've experienced or loved ones have experienced relating to a given issue, when the facts show they should probably vote for Biden if that's something they're impacted by. Crime's another good example of this. If you want crime to go down and you're just very simply looking at which president has overseen larger decreases in crime, Biden's your guy. If you are appreciating this show out of a hotel room and you want to support the work we do in the freest, easiest way possible, you can do so by clicking that subscribe button if you have not already. Back to the video. Then you also have this moment from the same briefing.
Up on Zeke.
Yeah, sure.
For such a monumental decision, the president did address why he left the race.
Well, thank you.
But he left a lot of it for us to read between the lines. He did not make clear why he's leaving the race, even in the excerpts that you bring up.
Yep.
He says that, the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. Is he saying it's because he was too old? In another one, he said that it was for the sake of democracy. That does not answer why he thought he was in the way of democracy. So why did he make this decision?
A new generation, and he also said the next sentence was to unite. It's also to unite the nation. Look, the president has talked about this twice. One in a letter that he addressed to the American people on Sunday, laying out a very monumental, to your point, it is a monumental decision that he made, and he thought very long and hard. He also said that he's been serving this country as a public servant for more than 50 years. It is not an easy decision to make. He talked about unity. He talked about the next generation.
I'll stop it there, but I don't really know what the utility is of that question. Because here's the moment being referred to. I think Biden's explanation is perfectly fine.
I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. There is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now.
What do the reporters asking about this saying he didn't explain enough? What are they wanting from him? To go, hey, so we looked at polling and we looked at different surveys and focus groups and the trajectory of polling and the post-debate fallout, and we determined that it's going to be very difficult for me to win, so I'm going to drop out so that Kamala can have a better shot of winning. Just that he's saying he thinks his record merits a second term, true, and he realized the best way to unite, meaning create a big enough movement to defeat MAGA, is to have the next generation of leadership, because that seems to be a little bit more popular, according to the numbers, the data. If he got more into the weeds, it would be a very strange Oval Office address. You know, I was talking to a pollster, his name is blah, 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 and he said, sir, you have no pathway to victory. No, he's explaining in a general sense that for the sake of democracy, which right now in the interest of democracy, we have to defeat Trump, he's going to hand the torch to someone in the next generation and who has a better shot at defeating Trump for the sake of democracy, despite Biden's own ambition and his own solid record that would justify a second term. Really? Do we really have to be upset by that too? Gosh. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.